Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Naruto Was the Perfect Shinobi, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. A long shower and almost 3 hours later, Naruto approached the Hokage tower. He and the Ninetales had gone over their problem at length and come to the conclusion that the best course would be to come out and own up to the hosts knowing about his demon when Sarutobi asked. This would mark the one occasion ever during which the blonde was able to express some gratitude about the village's taunts. His being ridiculed and called a demon all this time would allow him to claim to having pieced his circumstances together on his own. And perhaps Anko wouldn't even rat on him at all. Naruto was her student and the demon carrier at least liked to think that she had some consideration towards him. He moved past the nameless Anbu guarding the tower's entrance without a word and proceeded upstairs towards the Hokage's business quarters. The interior was bustling with clerical employees going about the usual business. Few bothered to notice his presence, but those who did made certain to send him the usual cold glares. These swine would all live to regret their actions. I'm sorry, but Hokage-sama is currently in a, oh, it's you. The Anbu doorman's automated response changed to a vicious snarl upon noticing the visitor. Naruto wasn't about to let some nondescript grunt intimidate him, though in all likelihood he was a strong shinobi given that he had been charged with protecting the Hokage's working quarters. The whole situation was null in the end, seeing as this person would not dare to start something here and incur the Sandaim's wrath. That's right, and I have an appointment. Let me pass, no count. The cat-masked Anbu bristled but had no choice other than to let him pass. Naruto sneered as he passed into the Hokage's room. He wasn't surprised to note that Anko was seated there in advance. The Jinchuriki was right on time, so she must have arrived prior to the scheduled meeting. Proper conduct dictated that the snake-like Kunoiki wouldn't spill all her charge's secrets with him sitting the next chair over. Not that such things as tact and decency ever mattered all that much to the loud and abrasive Mitarashi Anko. Ah, there you are. Please take a seat, Naruto. Naruto nodded and slid into the chair next to Anko's. She glanced over at him and then turned her gaze back towards Sandaime. The Hokage lit his pipe as the demon container relaxed into the leather armchair. The lit tobacco provided a soothing aroma that calmed the blonde's tense nerves. Apologies about being late, Hokage-sama. I didn't mean to hold things up. Naruto wasn't actually late at all, but it seemed like the appropriate comment to make. You aren't late at all. Now then, let's get down to business. The demon carrier listened as the old Hokage spoke. He and Anko would be traveling to Sakai, a river port situated a moderate distance to the east. The commercial town was the main inland aquatic trade hub linking Fire Country and the small island Wave Country. Wave has a convenient location on an island past the Sakai River's mouth where it opened into the Eastern Sea. Port Sakai was a criminal locale and had been Naruto's destination during his last excursion 2 weeks earlier. Since then an opium war had erupted between the established local Yakuza and a newer group. The battle sparked when the local boss's nephew had been killed during a transaction along with his entire escort. The uncle was enraged and determined to send his organization's new rivals packing and had sent an underling to Konoha to contract a team to lend assistance in the sabotage and extermination. The operation was rated as a B rank mission. Your contact will meet you at the arranged location at noon tomorrow. This mission should last a week, so plan in accordance. Understood, Hokage-sama. We'll go and get prepared, then, with your permission. Naruto's lips quirked in a small sarcastic smile upon hearing Anko speak so seriously. Her previous disrespect towards the Sandaime was not something she was willing to exhibit in the venerated shinobi elder's presence, it seemed. So very like a snake, shedding her skin whenever she liked. At least she had made a token attempt to help him avoid the coming interrogation. As you wish, Mitarashi-san. I'll be keeping Naruto a while longer, however, so you'll see him in the morning. Anko cast another look back at Naruto as she departed and grinned. Meet me at the gates at dawn tomorrow morning. Best not be late or I'll be leaving your punk ass behind. Once Anko was gone, The Hokage sent to have tea brought in. The old man smoked his pipe with leisure and observed the much younger genin. Naruto was rather more at ease with the Sandaime than with most other people. The village leader had never once treated him with contempt and had on several occasions taken steps to assist the demon vessel with his education and training, when his actual instructors had given none. So then, tell me how being a Konoha genin has suited you these recent weeks. Naruto saw no reason to lie, and so gave an honest response. The work hasn't all been as bad as I'd thought it would be, though I'm glad to be doing a real mission now. I'm learning a lot with Anko-sensei. Sandaime's expression indicated that Naruto's answer wasn't quite what he'd been seeking. The demon carrier sipped his tea and pulled a scowl. The drink was bitter and unsweetened green tea. He would have liked something less unpleasant to the taste. Your sensei tells me that you've managed to summon the snake boss during exercises this morning. Naruto shrugged as though executing a summoning that needed something close to Hokage's chakra levels were nothing worth mentioning. The Hokage seemed rather amused with the blonde genin's nonchalant attitude. She passed her Kuchio's contract to me, though it did take me a couple tries to call out Manda. That is quite an impressive accomplishment, Naruto. The demon carrier ignored the compliment, though he was pleased to hear it inside. I only needed the summon contract to control the snake hand. Manda doesn't matter. Naruto wasn't about to tell the Hokage that he was entertaining the idea that he might somehow meet the great serpents there. He rather doubted that the Sandaime would take well to his giving people over to Manda as tribute. A shinobi's enemies were all over the place. Sooner or later he would be able to gather together enough victims to appease the snake boss. Regardless, Anko tells me that the snake revealed a terrible secret as he departed. Here we go. Took you long enough, old man. I've known about being a demon ever since I was a kid, Hokage-sama. The villagers have always reminded me. Sandaime closed his eyes and lowered his head. The old man looked over at Naruto again a moment or so later with a somewhat pained and much more serious visage. The townspeople had never outright said that he was the demon's carrier, but it could do naught but advance the blonde's position to allow the Hokage to think otherwise. I must apologize to you. I issued a decree against speaking out about that incident several years ago. I knew that the villagers have been rude and unkind to you, but it had never occurred to me that people would ignore the Hokage's orders and violate the decree. You are not a monster, Naruto. You are a hero, a child who protects this village against a great evil, and those around you are blind to it. Naruto kept his expression level. Attempting to act would get him caught and compromise all. The best course was to continue being as snide and apathetic as usual. Sandaime would see through any appeal to pity in less than an instant. One didn't survive so long atop a hidden shinobi village without being able to read other people. Well, being told is better than cursed and spat upon all the time and not knowing the reason. Sandaime nodded with an approving smile. That is a good attitude to take. Konoha will recognize its mistakes soon and will change its attitude. Naruto curled his lip in a bitter sneer. Forgive me, but I'm not holding my breath, Hokage-sama. I have something to give back to you while I'm still here. Ah, so you've decided to return that stolen scroll at last. The demon carrier raised his blonde brows in surprise. He hadn't even reached into his coat to produce his stolen item. You knew I had it all along, then. That's a little odd. Don't be ridiculous, Naruto. Old though I might be, I've not gone senile. You did well in taking the scroll and returning to your apartment, but you were also tactless enough to be seen wandering around Konoha during the investigation. You would have done better to have remained hidden in the woods. People here are always going to suspect you, and your presence outside was reported within minutes. I have allowed you to keep and study the scroll these past weeks because you were scared enough to elude being caught holding it in your possession in the very enemy's midst. I've always rewarded merit as it deserves. I at least hope that you've learned something valuable. Naruto blinked in surprise. He hadn't even considered that the old man might have known a thing about the scroll's whereabouts. He withdrew the stolen item and placed it onto the Sandaime's desk. The Hokage drank his tea and waited in silence. I've learned several things, though the techniques are well past what I can handle in general. Kinjutsu aren't made to be used by genin. Now then, you have a big mission early tomorrow. Return home and get some rest. Naruto rose to leave as ordered. He considered stopping to express his gratitude to the old man in regards to all he'd done to help the prodigal shinobi. The blonde demon carrier shook his head and kept on walking. Such human sentiments didn't suit him in the least. XXXXXXXXXX. Meanwhile, the sun was beginning to sink into the horizon outside. Yuhi Kurenai sat at her table at a small outdoor restaurant overlooking the Hokage Tower. The place specialized in various beverages, its location situated to cater to the Sandime's clerical workers and their insatiable caffeine drives. Kurenai was sipping on a double latte and had a large apple and cream cheese bear claw on her plate. While she tended to not like sugar in general, even teammates' leader had a small sweet tooth that demanded to be indulged on occasion. She would have liked to have had someone to converse with, but her usual crowd wasn't available. Kakashi was preoccupied with training his genin cell and Asuma was supervising his honor mission. Anko hadn't been around either, no doubt working with Naruto. Others were outside the village on missions or bogged down with administrative work. Thinking about Anko also made her mind wander to what had become a rather common topic in recent weeks, her team's resident problem child. Kurenai wanted to help Naruto learn to open up to other people. The blonde was hopeless in understanding how to interact with those around him. That much had been made apparent during the team's last mission together. She had told them that she was leaving them to run a personal errand in the village, but had remained in the area and used a henge to change her appearance to look like a small dog so that she would be able to observe how her students behaved without her constant presence keeping them in line. Naruto had some serious issues with camaraderie. He was so accustomed to being mistreated that he remained unwilling to lower his emotional barriers. Except with her, she noticed, and then only when the two were alone. Naruto sometimes returned her smiles and chatted with her sans his usual deception. Though minuscule, the progress was nonetheless warming to her. Still, he was making even slower progress with his teammates as well. Naruto was no longer being outright vicious towards Ino and he still maintained that curious accord he had with Kiba. She had been a bit irritated to see him use the Kage Bunshin to shirk the mission. The point behind making genin menial tasks was to teach him to work hard and work together, and Naruto's tactics precluded both aims. She didn't know how or when the Jinchuriki had learned the restricted technique, but his advanced SKS were a boon to the team and were thus alright with her. Perhaps this was how her teammate was meant to work. Naruto would blaze the path and excel and the others would struggle and even to keep him within sight. With Anko giving Naruto her exclusive training, the SK gap between him and the other two genin was going to widen more, and not narrow in the slightest. At the same time, Kurenai had appreciated his reluctance to brag about his abilities to the other two. She had long thought being humble to be an endearing character trait and arrogant people tended to get under her skin like nothing else. Kurenai let out a resigned sigh upon coming to the conclusion that this team was never to become legend in Konoha or even remain together long. Naruto would soar like a meteor through the Konoha shinobi ranks and leave Kiba and Ino in his wake. He would no doubt be an accomplished elite when his two current teammates became Chunin. Soon enough the blonde would be her teammate on missions rather than her subordinate. She made another sizable dent in her bear claw and gazed across the street right in time to see the spiked blonde head that dominated her thoughts leaving the Hokage Tower. Kurenai swallowed her bite in haste and waved him over. She could do a lot worse as eating companions went. Naruto blinked and hesitated but stalked over in the end. Kurenai-san, konbanwa. I didn't expect to see you out all alone and isolated. Normally she would have been irritated with the base insinuation behind such a remark. The idea that she was some helpless damsel who shouldn't be out on her own rankled with a proud kunoichi like Yuhi Kurenai, but the Naruto's amused appearance assured her that he had been aiming to garner that reaction and nothing more. Tactless, but she would let it slide in his case. He didn't know much better. She delivered her retort with the same mocking seriousness. You had better be more cautious, Naruto-kun. Imagine that your sensei had heard that remark. Sensei, something that she wasn't to him, as much as she wanted to be. Kurenai smiled as the blonde gave an exaggerated shudder. I shudder even to think about it. She can hit a target at 100 meters with a needle. I've seen it. Come here and sit with me. I hate eating out alone. Naruto seed his head and stared at her with a strange look, as though Kurenai were some ridiculous creature in a circus exhibit. His emotionless blue orbs were trained like an eagle's on her mouth and didn't move a centimeter as he sat down opposite her. A long moment passed without a word, and the genin's gaze was beginning to bother her. She turned her head and looked at her own image in a near window. She could have keeled over in embarrassment at the sight that greeted her. There was cream cheese and apple smeared all over her mouth and chin. She then grabbed her napkin and wiped the mess clean, glaring at the blonde all the while. And I thought it suited you, Kurenai-san. Applesauce never looked so good. Quiet, or else I'll introduce you to my patented pervert repelling knee. Naruto grinned in response. She observed with more than a little anger that the proprietor didn't come over to allow him to order something. The spiky blonde didn't seem to mind. At least his whiskered countenance wasn't indicating such, anyway. Then I guess it's a good thing I'm not a pervert or anything. The genin kept his gaze locked on the older woman's as he spoke. Dull and listless as the pair appeared to an uneducated observer, Naruto's twin aquatic orbs held a certain burning intensity that was quite visible to one able to look underneath the obvious and see it. Kurenai was a scared observer, a trait that came with being a genjutsu specialist. She had never once caught this kid looking at her other assets, as she had noticed her other male subordinate doing on several occasions. Uzumaki Naruto was a strange enigma. All the proper lines were harsed and obscured, and with the blonde, he looked like a mature teenager rather than a prepubescent child, and acted the part as well unless thrown into a situation that his established mindset wasn't prepared to deal with. There were no existing records about him in Konoha's data archives either other than his name and mission statistics. Kurenai sometimes had a little trouble viewing him as a child at all. Please tell me what you were doing at the Hokage Tower. Kurenai thought it best to get some conversation going again. Her thoughts had been beginning to wander into treacherous waters. Despite Naruto's looks and attitude and that unwavering stare, the blonde genin was still very much a minor, and she was more than twice his age. Even considering him in such terms was gross and improper, her own budding relationship with Sarutobi Asuma notwithstanding. A mission assignment. I'll be going with Anko-sensei to Port Sakai in the morning. Kurenai was somewhat jealous upon hearing this. The kunoichi had known well in advance that Naruto would be sent to shadow his combat instructor on some higher-ranked missions, but still he was her team's unspoken leader. Supervising him on missions was supposed to be her charge, and she wasn't at all pleased with Anko being allowed to encroach onto it. She took great pride in her new role as an instructor, and this entire idea implied that she was little more than a disposable accessory when it came to the prodigal Naruto's development, and was thus rather insulting. The serpentine kunoichi worked alongside Naruto enough with his training. Kurenai wasn't going to take her irritation out on him though. Then I would assume that you're doing an escort mission, or delivering docents. Naruto shook his head and responded with a slight gleam in his azure gaze, perhaps a bit miffed that she had even insinuated such. I.e., Kurenai-san. Much better than that. We've been ordered to help some opium gang in wiping out another one. She was a bit upset a moment ago, but she was downright enraged now. Kurenai bit down on her lip almost hard enough to draw blood. Sending a 12-year-old genin on an extermination campaign was a disgusting and insane practice. Shinobi were contract curs, she knew and well acknowledged, but still, Konoha village did not share training practices with the Bloody Mist. Staining Naruto's hands with blood and gore at such a young age would result in compromising his mind later on. Kurenai had seen this happen with Uchiha Itachi, having worked alongside the wanted criminal on several missions as a chunin. Itachi had started King much too young and had become more or less desensitized to violence, and then apathetic to it. Severing all emotional capacities had been his mind's only method to protect against total madness, and even that hadn't been enough in the end. One needed but walk through the ghost town that had one been the bustling Uchiha district to see the results. Kurenai would not sit back and watch the same happen to Naruto. The blonde had struggled too hard through constant adverse conditions to be lost like this. Her companion noticed these raw emotions burning on her visage. Her control had been compromised in anger. You're not looking so good, Kurenai-san. Perhaps I should leave. I didn't mean to cause problems. No, don't go. You're much too young to be doing missions like that, Naruto-kun. Naruto's expression lost that little gleam and his eyes narrowed in indignation. No need to be concerned so much, Kurenai-san. I can kill Yakuza goons with ease. It'll be a cinch. Kurenai understood that he had misinterpreted her emotional concern as a slight against his abilities. That seemed to be how Naruto's brain operated. He would construe any comment in the most negative way possible due to sheer instinct. Kurenai imagined that she might be the same in his position. The minimal human interaction that he had experienced as a child had been almost nothing but negative. And he did interpret her comment as such. The one thing that the Jinchuriki could not stand was being viewed as weak or incapable. Naruto had pushed his all to the breaking point during his battle with Anko to prove his worth. Kurenai didn't want to compromise the progress that she had made with him due to this. She grasped his hand under the table. His skin was hot, superheated by anger. That's not what I meant. I know that you can handle it, but you shouldn't have to. Naruto sat quiet a moment and nodded, pulling his hand loose and standing. I've got to go. Anko-sensei and I leave at dawn and I've still got some work to do. He walked out without waiting to hear a response. Kurenai sighed again and palmed some Ryo notes down on her table. Her appetite had vanished. She was taking great pains to suppress her burning desire to storm across the street and into the Hokage's workspace and vent her displeasure with his decisions regarding Naruto. Nothing would be accomplished through meeting him in a towering rage. She would see the Sandaime in the morning, but now she was going to take a trip over to the public onsen and soak until her ill temper subsided. She considered tailing behind Naruto to make an attempt to repair the damage done between them but realized that it would accomplish nothing save angering him more. He also didn't like being coddled. Gomen, Yuhi-san. I would like a quick word, please. Kurenai let out an exasperated breath and whipped her head towards the speaker. Make it quick. I'm not in the best mood right this second. The man, who she recognized as the restaurant owner, let out a condescending smile and nodded. Believe me, I understand and I wanted to apologize about that vicious little demon coming here and disturbing your meal. I should have ordered him to leave on the spot, but I didn't want to cause a public scene. Someone like him might have wrecked the entire shop. Rest assured that he won't be allowed back again. As compensation, your order will be on the house this evening. The red-eyed Kunoiki looked aside and bared her white teeth in a snarl that could rival Naruto's. She respected the kid even more now, having been exposed to what he had to deal with every single day. Kurenai would have lost control and killed a person or 100 long ago. How generous, but at least let me leave a proper tip. The calm and controlled woman snapped at last and whirled on the proprietor. The resulting slap carried all the strength Kurenai could muster behind it, a considerable amount given her shinobi training despite being much less scared in taijutsu than the other arts. The odious little troll staggered back and crashed into another table where a young civilian couple was eating. The kunoiki prowled around a little and then turned back and made several hand seals, layering 2 cooperative genjutsu over the entire establishment. One tricked a person's visual cortex into seeing vermin and cockroaches crawling all over the place, and the other stimulated the gag mechanism and induced uncontrollable choking and vomiting. People began retching and abandoning their meals within seconds. Let's see you deal with this, asshole. 2 birds with 1 stone. The man would lose his current customers and receive an even harsher blow to his business's reputation. Little incidents like this tended to stick in people's minds. Also, the Hokage would have to take great pains to deal with the mess. Symbiotic genjutsu were a nasty business. Each was maintained through the other, and so both had to be attacked at the exact same moment to make progress against them. Kurenai's mental techniques were tough to counter in the best scenarios. Her knowledge and SK with them was almost unparalleled, and in most cases she was able to add in extra little touches that stalled the usual dispelling procedures. The Hokage might even have to come down in person to break the symbiosis. Kurenai whipped her waved hair and walked toward the bathhouses with a rare purpose. Due to her unbalanced emotional state, she hadn't noticed a certain Jinchuriki observing the short altercation with a genuine appreciation budding in his expressionless blue orbs. XXXXXXXXXX. Rain poured down steadily in Fire Country the next day. Naruto and Anko had been in Port Sakai several hours, preparing to commence the mission. The larger operation contained 2 missions. Today they would raid the Gato Trading Company's branch headquarters in the Riverside City. Wave Country's shipping magnate and unsung dictator proved to be involved in several ventures less savory than mere trade. Gato was using his legitimate business as cover to conduct various illegal and lucrative operations. Among them was processing and selling opium in locales all along the Sakai River all through Fire Country, and now the man had come to the big city. Gato was the new compassion that their client wanted expunged. This compound contained one large building and several warehouses enclosed with a strong concrete barrier. The warehouses seemed to both store Gator's opium and to house his security and street thugs, while the building contained his cash assets and administrative core. Might as well get started. You deal with the goons while I sabotage the building. Hi, Anko-sensei. I thought I might use them as Mandasda, unless you have a problem with the idea. Mitarashi Anko smirked at her student's ruthlessness but shook her head in the negative. Not today, kiddo. A giant snake's gonna draw way more attention than we need. Naruto knew that she was right. This attack had to be kept somewhat quiet. Their mission was to move in and neutralize everybody in the compound, but not to attract outside attention while doing so. Ideally, they would make sure that word didn't reach Gator's headquarters in Wave Country. Should that happen, then he would recall the opium ship that served to both process and transport his drugs. Destroying that opium ship and its escort was the operation's second phase, which would occur upon the next shipment's scheduled arrival at Gator's private shipyard in 3 days' time, assuming this mission was accomplished without a hitch. You're right, let's get moving. Blast the radio tower with a lightning technique while I cut the electrical lines. No power and radio meant no working communications. Naruto did a couple quick seals and a lightning bolt arched down and struck the small tower. Sparks showered as it blew. Meanwhile, Anko tossed several kunai at the lines outside the concrete wall, choosing a spot where the downed lines wouldn't place the two in any danger. She barely missed a couple throws, but the lines went down quickly enough. The electrical lights around the warehouses and in the building proper went out in an instant. Trained ninja operated well in the darkness, and this gave the pair a distinct advantage. Naruto and Anko looked at one another and nodded. Each went to separate objective without a sound. Naruto saw his sensei tossing down spike traps at every possible exit to the building, including the ground below the windows. Anko then scaled the outer wall with ease and entered through the maintenance door at the top, intending to start with the executives and work her way downstairs. Naruto kept along the concrete wall as he ran to the warehouses. Several thugs were outside looking at the destroyed tower and cursing about the electrical storm. The meager light outside combined with the wall's shade and his dark clothing to obscure him almost perfectly. He and Anko had abandoned the usual garb and changed into loose black bodysuits and masks better suited to covert ops. Naruto entered the nearest warehouse through an open side door unnoticed. There were 2 men in the room. The demon carrier moved quickly and drew his katana, hacking through the poor miscreant's tea with a wild swing. The other turned around with a shout. Who the hell are Senejashu? 3 shadow snakes lashed out at Naruto's command. 2 coiled around his waist and bound him, while the third mercilessly bit into his en. The deep wound combined with the serpent's venom to K him in no time. The K wasn't quick enough to stop him screaming out though. Several other thugs started towards the one warehouse. Naruto could possibly K them all in a melee, but it wasn't a guarantee. Let me have them, Kit. I'm getting bored in here and I want to sharpen my fangs. Naruto smiled saccharinely inside his mind as he answered his 9-tailed companion. You never seem to want to chat with me unless you have to these recent weeks. The demon snarled and hurled against his bars with a loud crash. Now's not the time. We'll have this conversation later. Open my cage and let me out. Anko-sensei might show up again soon and your red chakra is way too noticeable. Let's not risk being exposed. The demon grumbled loudly. Naruto normally acquiesced to the Nine-Tails command in almost anything with barely any complaint. There was undeniable logic behind this rare denial though, and the demon relented with an irritated nod. Fine, but you'd better at least entertain me instead. Even while he bantered with the Kyuubi, Naruto spammed his seals and did his basic kaiten, Hatama. The resulting fireballs spread out and ignited the dry wood and opium boxes inside the warehouse. Naruto exited the door that he had entered through. The security thugs charged en masse through the main entrance and saw their 2 colleagues on the ground. Several began choking and hallucinating due to the wood smoke and the burning opium. The spiky blonde leapt up onto the concrete barrier wall near the door and placed a quick kunai trap. 3 men soon emerged and were repeatedly impaled by soaring knives. This battle was much too boring. These guys were both weak and stupid. The others retreated through the main entrance again and began running towards the main building to regroup. Once they reached the door, Anko's set spike traps activated. 4 more went down bleeding and in immeasurable pain. Naruto could sense chakra being expended inside the building. There were 3 sources. Whomever Anko-sensei was battling against had shinobi training, and she was outnumbered 2 to 1. Unless they were at elite level, she could handle them on her own with no trouble, but the demon vessel chose to go to her nonetheless. These remaining 9 thugs would need to be dispatched in short order. Playtime was over. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 18 Naruto copies rushed the 9 weaklings brandishing identical katana. The demon carrier wasted no time and was already scaling up the wall when the 2 groups collided. He heard Gator's hired men screaming right as he entered the maintenance door. The blonde then dispelled the clones, as the replications has served their intended purpose and maintaining an expended chakra that he might soon need. Once in the hallways he noticed that the main executive was 6 puncture wounds organized into 3 matching pairs indicated that he had been victim to the kunoiki's snake hand. 1 chakra then signal dissipated into nothingness. Either Anko had evened the odds or she had been extinguished due to them. Naruto's heartbeat picked up as he rushed down the stairs. A real battle, at last. He saw his sensei and 2 identical twin shinobi wearing hidden mist Hitai 8. Each had a terrible-looking claw on opposite arms that were connected by a long chain. One brother was on the ground and the other teeming with anger about it. My brother, that does it, Konoha-be. I'll kill you. Anko's brown snake eyes shined with bloodlust as she beckoned him to attack. She was no longer wearing her black mask. Naruto thought that she looked odd without her usual revealing clothes. He was used to seeing her almost in netted clothes. Go ahead and try me, big boy. You and him both couldn't take me on at the same time. The other brother charged brandishing his claw. Anko could take him out on her own, but Naruto had a more humiliating conclusion in mind. He reached out around the corner and grabbed the chain and pulled. Not expecting this sudden resistance, the other brother toppled back and crashed onto the ground with a thud. Naruto kept hold over the connection as he stalked out into the corridor with a smirk. Talk about your second-rate shinobi. That Gato guy obviously can't judge talent. Anko scowled at her student. Don't ever mess in my battles, Naruto. I hope you've cleaned out outside like I told you. They went down without trouble, Anko-sensei. The mist nin on the ground let out a groan. A student? Nothing but some damned genin punk. I can't believe this. Naruto scowled and brought his leg down into the other shinobi's breadbasket. He wheezed as his wind was driven out. We didn't give you permission to talk, chump. Shut it. Anko shook her head and spoke in an exasperated tone. Damage the merchandise during the interrogation and not until then. Despite his precarious position, the Kirinin still had some spirit remaining. I ain't telling you sheeds anything. Don't even bother wasting your time. The kunoiki's entire visage lit up with sadistic glee. We'll see about that soon enough. I might not be a specialist, but I'm no slouch when it comes to extracting intel. Naruto, haul ass downstairs and deal with whoever's still alive. I need to concentrate while I work. Naruto was more interested in watching a real tea session than in some worthless civilian clerks. But I've never seen a real tea session. I'd like to watch this. The purple-haired woman became incensed and snapped at her complaining student. We're on a mission right now, in case you haven't noticed, brat. Get lost or I'll give some private lessons in interrogation when we get home. Naruto raised his hands in a mock surrender and exited through an open window. The demon vessel had a sinking suspicion that he would be serving as the target in those lessons. The last sight he glimpsed was Anko calling out her shadow snakes and advancing slowly on the prone mist nin. He would be begging to be sent to his brother soon enough. The demon carrier entered the building again through another window on the ground level. Some targets had tried to escape the building and had been impaled against Anko's exit traps. The blonde worked his way back upstairs to his sensei's position and slew whomever he encountered in between. He knew that these people were innocents, but he couldn't let that stop him. Shinobi had to be remorseless at all times. Morals had no place in his shadowy world. A true ideal shinobi had no such emotions to hold him back. Not even the slightest expression moved in those cold blue orbs as Naruto brought his katana slicing down onto a pregnant worker as she begged to be spared. Expectant mother and unborn child perished in unison. She would have reported the attack to the Port Sakai authorities had she been allowed to live. Gato would have been told and the mission's secret nature lost. Nothing could be allowed to compromise the mission. Naruto considered keeping his hands clean through using distance techniques to do the king, but that meant expending chakra where it wasn't outright needed, and huge ninjutsu risked causing too much ruckus besides. Shinobi were mere tools, mechanical and optimal. The demon container took no pride in what he was doing but acknowledged it as needed. That was enough to grant him sleep at night. He reached the upstairs wing soon enough. His sensei was leaning against a wall. The mist nin looked like a butchered animal on the ground. His death had not been pleasant. These two were only lackeys. Their boss is an A-ranked missing nin. Business as usual. Mitarashi Anko expressed no regret whatsoever about having sent her preteen genin student to stain his hands and soul with innocent blood. Those hands hadn't been clean to begin with regardless. Naruto was content with her detachment. He didn't want to be treated like a child. He had been king since he was 7 and didn't need some pointless emotional counseling about his actions here. I bet their leader will be waiting at the next mission then. The woman nodded her agreement. Naruto took a towel that was on a nearby chair and cleaned away the coursing blood that drenched his hands and arms. He then wiped down his katana and sheathed the blade at his side. His name's Momoki Zabuza. He's known in most circles as Kirigakure no Kijin and was among Hidden Mist Village's elite 7 swordsmen. He'll be guarding the transport vessel. I'll be honest here. He's a dangerous opponent and I'm not sure I can beat him. Fighting against high-class Nukenin wasn't in our mission docket. Naruto shrugged. He didn't know who this Zabuza character was, but he didn't care. We can't pack up and go back now. The operation's not done yet. Snake-like eyes narrowed. Anko's voice came out as a dangerous hiss. Don't be a retard, Naruto. A scared shinobi always knows when to back down. Naruto remained unbothered. He didn't want to abandon a big mission. Returning to Konoha in disgrace would prove all those people that slandered him at all chances to be right. A single missing nin wasn't that much to be concerned about. Failure would convince the Hokage that he wasn't scared enough to do advanced work. The Jinchuriki would get shunted back down to doing D-rank missions. Uzumaki Naruto was no mere domestic servant. We can take him out together. Besides, I have a last resort to use in the worst case. That would be the demon and its powers. He could give over control in a heated battle and claim no responsibility. It would be possible to convince both Anko and Sandaime that the Biju had wrested power in order to preserve its own existence. No one had ever battled against Kyubi no Kitsune and lived. This Nukenin leader would not break that tradition. You're assuming he's gonna be alone. Mistakes like that get people ked, kid. I'm prepared to do what needs to be done. We're not going to lose. Anko blinked and stared at him a long moment but then showed her usual grin. All right, then. We'll see this through. Come on, let's go rent somewhere to sleep. Sensei and student both returned to the building's blacktop and leapt back down to the asphalt below. The constant downpour soon washed the remaining blood clean. Some might have seen the experience as something cathartic. Heaven's tears cleared loose sins that the whistling blonde demon carrier didn't even acknowledge. Naruto removed his mask and tossed it aside. Next time he would at least allow his victims to see their cur in the hole. Innocent casualties deserved that much at least. Standing atop a processing plant in the near distance, the same two cloaked characters who had watched Naruto during his last venture into this port locale observed the widespread carnage that the demon carrier bad created. The pair looked at one another and nodded, tailing unseen and unnoticed behind the two Konoha shinobi. Opening parenthesis. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.